You ever look into the eyes of a wild animal and feel like it knows something you don't? That's what happened that day. I saw this wolf, big one, dark coat, just standing there in the snow, staring straight at me. Not scared, not angry, just watching. Like it was waiting. Like it knew something was out there that I didn't. I hadn't seen a wolf that far north in years. Hell, I'd gone whole winters without catching even a track. But there he was. And he wanted me to follow. Now, I ain't the type to chase after ghosts. Spent too much time in places where you learn real quick what's real and what ain't. But that day, something pulled at me. I followed. And what I found, I still don't understand. A wrecked plane. A boy half frozen but alive. A father who wouldn't say much. And that wolf? He was gone. Never saw him again. I've carried this story for a long time. Kept it to myself mostly. Folks don't believe things like that. They want answers. I don't got answers, but I got the memory. And some nights when the wind cuts just right through the trees, I swear I hear paws in the snow. Name's John Miller. Born in Ohio, 1948. Grew up in a small town outside Columbus. My dad worked in a mill. Mom stayed home raising me and my two brothers. We were dirt poor, but we didn't know it at the time. Just thought that's how life was. Joined the Army at 17. Lied about my age to get in. Back then felt like the only way out of town. By 18 I was overseas. You can guess where. Vietnam. I don't talk much about the war. Not 'cause I'm ashamed. Not even 'cause I'm angry. Just, it's heavy. Real heavy. And most folks, they don't really want to hear the truth of it. They want to hear stories that fit into neat little boxes. Heroes and villains. Good and bad. But war ain't like that. I saw things over there that changed me. Things I can't explain, and things I'll never forget. I did what I had to do to keep my brothers alive. That's what I tell myself. But sometimes, that ain't enough to help you sleep. After I came back, I didn't fit in no more. Crowds made me jumpy. Noise felt like danger. Even the way people talked. So loud, so fast, always in a hurry. It didn't sit right with me. I tried the normal life. Worked a few jobs, drank too much, bounced around from town to town. But it was like I was carrying something heavy all the time, and no one else could see it. In '79, I made a choice. Packed up my truck and drove north. Real north. Past Anchorage, past Fairbanks. Ended up in a cabin near the Brooks Range. Middle of nowhere. Just trees, snow, and quiet. And that quiet? It saved me. I started hunting to eat, fishing, chopping wood, making things with my hands. I didn't need much. I took odd jobs at a mill when I needed cash. But mostly, I stayed to myself. Didn't have a phone. Didn't have a radio. Just me and the land. Folks thought I was running from something. Maybe I was. But I liked it that way. The cold don't judge you. The woods don't care where you've been. They just ask one thing, that you respect them. Over the years, I learned every trail, every sound the forest makes. I could tell by the way the wind blew if a storm was coming. I could smell snow in the air. Could track an elk for miles without losing it. I wasn't just living in the woods. I was part of it. Some winters were brutal. You'd wake up and it'd be 30 below, fire out, frost on the inside of the windows. But I liked it. The struggle made sense to me. You chop your wood, you keep warm, you hunt, you eat. Simple. Honest. I'd go weeks without seeing another soul. Once in a while, a bush pilot would fly over and wave. Sometimes I'd see tracks from mining trucks up on the road, but that was about it. No TV, no news, no noise, just peace. People think living like that makes you lonely. But for me, being around people was what made me feel alone. Out there, I felt present, alive. I wasn't trying to forget my past. I was just trying to live with it. I kept some things from the war. A photo of my unit, a patch, a letter from a buddy who didn't make it home. I'd take him out sometimes, sit by the fire, and just remember. Not out loud, just in my head. That's enough. By '97, I was 49, hair already graying, face lined from the wind and cold. My hands were calloused, back stiff in the mornings, but I was strong, fit, probably in better shape than most men half my age. When you live close to the earth, it keeps you honest and tough. That winter had been harsh. Snow came early and heavy. I'd lost a week's worth of supplies when a bear tore into my smokehouse. Had to trap more to make up for it, but by March things had started to shift. Sun was sticking around longer. Birds were coming back. You could smell spring on the wind even if your boots were still crunching over ice. That's the world I was in when it happened. March 14th, 1997. Just another quiet night in the woods. Fire crackling. Dog asleep by the door. Me cleaning my rifle after a long day. No reason to expect anything out of the ordinary. And then I heard it. Not loud, not close. Just a distant boom. Could have been thunder. Could have been an avalanche. Could have been nothing. But something in my gut shifted. Like a string had been pulled tight in my chest. Still, I didn't move. Just sat there listening to the dark, letting the sound settle. I'd heard all kinds of noises over the years. Ice cracking, trees falling, planes flying low. This one felt different. But I didn't know it yet. Didn't know that just a few miles from where I sat, a small plane had gone down. Didn't know there was a man and a boy lying in the snow waiting for someone who'd probably never come. And I sure as hell didn't know that a wolf, of all things, was going to show up the next day and change everything. People ask me sometimes, "What do you do out there all alone?" I always tell them the same thing. I live. Out in those woods, every day's about the same. And that's not a bad thing. There's a rhythm to it, a quiet kind of purpose. You wake up early. Real early. 'Cause once the sun's up, you're already late. First thing, you check the fire. Stove needs feeding. If it's out, your cabin's colder than the air outside, and that ain't no joke. I used to sleep light just so I could hear the wind shift or the fire die down. Once the fire's going, you step outside. Let me tell you, there's nothing like that first breath of Alaskan air. It don't just hit your lungs, it bites. Like the land's reminding you where you are. The cold's got a memory out there. It don't forget. My cabin sat near the tree line, tucked up against a slope. I built it myself. Took 2 summers. Axe, saw, no machines. Just muscle and time. Wasn't pretty, but it was solid. Wood stove, rain barrel, root cellar, a little shack out back I used for smoking meat. Kept my tools sharp, my gear clean. You don't take care of your stuff out there, it turns on you. Food was work. Always. I trapped small game, hares mostly. Sometimes fox. In the spring I'd fish. Big graylings, sometimes pike. I smoked what I could, salted what I couldn't. Hunted when I needed meat. Elk if I was lucky. Moose if I was even luckier. I only took what I needed. Never more. That's a rule I never broke. Some days I'd go 2-3 miles on foot just to check trap lines. You learn to read the ground like a map, a broken branch, a bent blade of grass, a set of prints with a little drag in the right foot. That's a rabbit that's been wounded. Might be limping. Makes it easier to catch but harder to feel good about. I didn't keep a clock. No watch. The sun told me what time it was. The sky told me if I had time to make it back before dark. And if I didn't, well, I'd made plenty of lean-tos. Knew how to start a fire in wet snow. Knew how to wait. The hardest part of living like that? Ain't the cold, ain't the hunger, it's the stillness, the way the world gets too quiet sometimes, like the land itself is holding its breath. That's when you start hearing things. Old voices, old memories, things you thought were buried come up real gentle, like mist off the lake. And sometimes, you hear things you can't explain. I had a dog back then. Big old mutt I called Ranger. Half husky, half something else. He was my shadow. Slept by the stove, followed me through snowbanks twice his height, and barked at things I couldn't see. Smart animal. Never barked at a bear, but once he growled at a birch tree for 5 minutes straight. Still don't know why. We had a routine. Mornings were for work. Afternoons, if it wasn't snowing, I'd sit on the porch with a tin cup of black coffee and just watch. Watch the trees sway. Watch the clouds move. Sometimes watch the birds pick at the bones I'd throw out. I didn't speak much, but in my head I was always thinking, making peace with things. Evenings were slow, cook a bit, patch up gear. Sometimes I'd carve wood just to keep my hands busy. I didn't make anything special. Mostly little animals, birds, stuff like that. Gave them away when folks passed through, which wasn't often. Maybe 1 or 2 hunters a year, maybe a ranger. Winter was hardest. Days were short. Nights felt endless. You had to prepare months ahead, cut enough wood, store enough food. If you didn't, the land would punish you. No forgiveness out there. But I liked it. The rules were clear. The quiet didn't scare me anymore. After the war, after the noise, the blood, the confusion, I needed that quiet. Now I ain't saying it was paradise. I had bad days, got hurt more than once, fell through the ice once, thought that was the end. Got treed by a moose, got sick from bad meat. One time I cut my leg bad with an axe. Sat in that cabin for 2 weeks with a fever talking to ghosts. But I survived. That's what I did, what I do. I survive. I didn't go looking for anyone. I wasn't a rescuer, wasn't a hero. I just wanted peace. But life don't care what you want. It gives you what it gives. And in March of '97, it gave me something I still can't explain. I still think about that time, about the way everything changed in a single day. The rhythm broke, the silence got loud, and it all started with a sound in the night. Just one sound. It was the night of March 14th, 1997. I remember because I'd just finished mending a tear in my coat. Wind had picked up that week, sharp, mean kind of wind that makes trees creak like they're about to snap. I'd been up since before sunrise, out setting traps and checking on the creek. Ice was still thick, but you could feel it getting soft underneath. Spring wasn't here yet, but she was coming. That night I was sitting by the stove, dog curled up by my feet, cup of coffee in my hands. Same routine. Nothing different. Then I heard it. A low, distant boom, not sharp like a gunshot, more like a thud, swallowed up by snow and space, like the mountain had let out a breath. Made my windows rattle just a little. Enough to raise my head. Now I've lived through blizzards, slides, even a quake once. Sounds out there don't surprise me much. But this one didn't sit right. Too short for thunder. Too soft for rockfall. Too wrong for silence. Ranger lifted his head too. Ears perked. He didn't bark, just stared toward the west wall, like he could feel something. I stood up, stepped outside, let the cold wrap around me like a wet blanket. The stars were out, sharp, bright, unmoving. No wind, just cold air and the smell of pine and smoke. Nothing but that boom. It stuck in my chest. I thought maybe it was a mining rig up on the ridge. Sometimes they did blasts without much notice. Or maybe a glacier shifted. You never know with this land. Sometimes it groans and creaks for no reason. Still, I stood there for a long while, hands in my pockets, breath rising like steam, and that uneasy feeling just sitting behind my ribs. But what could I do? There was no radio, no phone, no neighbors, no roads within 10 miles. If something had happened, I wasn't going to know unless I walked straight into it. So I went back inside, stoked the fire, took one last look at Ranger, who hadn't moved. He was watching me like he knew I should be worried, but also like he trusted me to decide. That's the thing about dogs. They don't push you. They just wait. I slept light that night. Woke up twice. Once to the sound of a branch hitting the roof. Once to silence so deep I could hear the blood in my ears. Come morning, everything looked normal. Snow was thick, sky gray, usual March day, but the air felt off, like when the woods go quiet before a storm. No birds, no squirrels, just still. I packed light, took my rifle, some jerky, and a thermos of coffee. Told myself I was going out to check traps, maybe hunt a bit. But truth is, I wanted to find the reason behind that sound. Or maybe the sound wanted me to find it. I don't know how else to say it. Ranger followed close. He always did. We headed west, toward the slope I'd cleared the year before. Snow was up to my knees in places. No tracks, no signs of life. I took it slow. That's one thing you learn living alone, never rush. One misstep, one sprain, and that's it. No one's coming to get you. The woods won't cry over a broken leg. I moved like I always did, quiet, steady, watching the trees, listening to the wind. By noon I hadn't seen a single animal, not even a crow. That's when I knew something was wrong. See, even on the worst days, the woods are never empty. There's always something moving. But that day, it felt like every creature had packed up and left. And then about a mile from the ridge, Ranger stopped. He froze, ears up, tail stiff. That dog had tracked bears, outrun wolves, and stared down a moose once. But I'd never seen him do what he did that day. He backed up. Not out of fear, out of confusion. I followed his gaze. That's when I saw it, a figure in the distance. Not a man, not a bear, a wolf. Big one, thick coat, dark gray, almost black. He stood out like coal on snow, just standing there, watching me, not moving, not blinking. Now I'd seen wolves before, mostly at a distance. They didn't like people, always stayed away. But this one didn't run. He just looked at me, and I looked back. I don't know how long we stared at each other. Felt like minutes, might have been seconds. But there was a weight in it, like he was waiting for me. And then he turned, walked slow, paused once, looked back, like he was checking if I was coming. And I followed. Not because I believed in signs, not because I thought I'd find anything, but because in that moment I knew somehow I needed to go where that wolf was going. Ranger hesitated, then followed me, real close to my boots. We walked for maybe half a mile, no path, no trail. Just snow and trees and that strange silence hanging over everything. And then I smelled fuel, sweet, sharp, burning in the cold air. That's when I saw the metal, a sliver of silver through the trees. Twisted, broken, bent in ways it shouldn't be. The wolf was gone. But what he'd led me to was a wreck. There's things in this world that don't make sense. You live long enough in the wild, you stop trying to explain every shadow, every sound. Nature don't owe you answers. Sometimes it just shows you what it wants. And you better be quiet enough to notice. That's how it was with the wolf. I'd gone out that day with my rifle and my usual pack. Just a handful of jerky, some coffee, knife, compass. Same stuff I always carried. Wasn't expecting nothing. Wasn't looking for nothing. Just following a feeling. I was moving west, through a stretch of forest I knew well. Birch trees, thin and close together. Snow came up almost to the tops of my boots. Each step slow, careful. Ranger was right behind me, quiet as a shadow. Then without a sound he stopped. I felt him pause before I even saw what he was seeing. That dog never froze for nothing unless it was serious. I turned my head and followed his gaze. And there he was. About 30, maybe 40 yards ahead. A wolf. Big one. He was standing just at the edge of the tree line where the snow thinned out. Head high, ears forward, still as stone. His coat was dark, not black, not gray, but a deep muddy mix of both. Thick and heavy. He looked like he'd been carved out of the land itself, like he belonged there. And he was staring straight at me. Now, I've seen wolves before. Seen 'em on ridges, heard 'em at night. Most of the time they move fast, stay low, disappear before you even realize they were there. But this one didn't move. Didn't run, didn't growl, didn't even blink. Just stared. And I stared back. Something passed between us in that silence. I don't know what. Call it instinct. Call it old soldier's gut. Call it what you want. But I felt it in my chest. Like he was waiting for me. Like he wanted me to follow. I didn't say a word. Just shifted my weight. Took one slow step forward. The wolf turned. Took 3 steps. Then stopped. Looked back over his shoulder. I swear to you, it looked just like a man checking to see if his buddy was behind him. No panic. No fear, just a look. Then he kept walking. And I followed. Ranger stayed glued to my heel, tail low, muscles tight. He didn't bark, didn't pull, just moved with me. Whatever that wolf was, Ranger knew it wasn't normal. We followed him through a stretch of woods I'd walked 100 times, but this time it felt different. Like the air was holding its breath, like the trees were leaning in to watch. The wolf never ran, just kept that same steady pace, always just far enough ahead that I could see him, always glancing back like he was making sure I hadn't turned around. He led me across a small frozen creek over a ridge, then down into a hollow. The snow was deep there, untouched. That's when the smell hit me. Fuel. Faint at first, then stronger. Bitter, sharp. I knew that smell, too well. Then I saw it, a glint of silver through the trees. At first I thought it was a piece of old metal, maybe a rusted truck or an old snow machine left to rot. But as I got closer, I saw the shape. Wings. Bent, twisted, half buried in the snow like the earth had tried to swallow it. A plane, small one. Looked like a Cessna. The front end was smashed against a fallen pine. One wing had torn clean off and was resting 30 feet away like a broken arm. Windows shattered. Tail crooked like it had tried to twist away at the last second. There was no fire, no smoke, just silence. I stopped walking. The wolf was gone. Just gone. No tracks leading away, no sound. Just gone. I looked around, slow. Nothing but trees and wreckage, and that's when I heard it. A groan. Low, weak. Came from the fuselage. I raised my rifle, not because I expected danger, but because in moments like that, it's all you have in your hands. It's habit. I moved closer. Stepped over bent metal and broken plastic. Snow crunched under my boots. The door on the side was open just a crack, frozen in place. Inside, I saw him. A man, mid-30s, maybe older. Beard, face pale, lips cracked. He was leaning back, legs twisted in a bad way. One pant leg soaked in blood, frozen stiff. Eyes barely open. He looked up at me. Tried to speak. Couldn't. Next to him, wrapped in a torn blanket. A boy. Looked no more than 12. Thin. Pale. Face sunken like he hadn't eaten in days. He was breathing, but shallow. Neither of them saw the wolf. They didn't even mention it later. But I know what I saw. I know what led me there. And I know deep down, without that animal, I wouldn't have found them in time. Some things you just carry, you don't talk about them. People won't believe you anyway. They'll say you were tired, or dreaming, or maybe just lucky. But I don't believe in luck. I believe in moments, in choices, in signs. And that wolf? He was a sign. You see a wreck like that? Your mind goes quiet. Not fast, not panicked. Just still. I've seen wreckage before. In the war. On roads. In the woods, sometimes you stumble on an old cabin or a crashed snowmobile left for the trees to reclaim. But this was different. Because this one was fresh. The metal still had shine under the snow. The glass was cracked but not yet covered by frost. And the smell, fuel, rubber, something else, was still hanging in the air like a ghost. I moved slow. Years living alone teach you not to rush into anything. Doesn't matter if it's a bear, a storm, or a broken-down machine. You go careful, you go quiet, and you listen before you touch anything. Ranger stayed behind me, ears low, body tight. He didn't bark, didn't growl, but he was nervous. I could feel it in his steps. I walked around the tail first. Numbers were half covered by snow. Couldn't tell what state it was registered in. The fuselage had torn open in the middle, like a soda can bent in someone's hand. Bits of luggage scattered around, half buried. A kid's backpack, a coat, part of a cooler. No fire, no smoke. That told me something right away. They'd hit at a bad angle, but the snow must have cushioned the landing just enough to keep it from exploding. Lucky? Maybe. Or maybe just strange. I followed the footprints, barely there. One set was small, the other dragged on one side. Fresh, but not moving anymore. Like whoever left him had collapsed right there. I came to the main door, bent, stuck half open. I pulled it slow, took some force. Inside was dark, cold, like a freezer left open to the wind. The man was sitting against the far wall, his body twisted like he'd tried to shift and gave up halfway. His eyes flickered when I came in. He didn't speak at first, just blinked, slow. His leg was bad, broken, maybe in 2 places, swollen, bruised black. His face was drawn tight, white as the snow outside, with lips cracked from thirst and cold. He looked at me like I wasn't real. Then his mouth moved. Help. One word. Dry as paper. That's when I saw the boy. The blanket was wrapped tight around him. He was curled up on the floor beside the man, head against his arm, mouth slightly open. Breathing, but shallow. Slow. The kid looked like he'd gone days without food. His cheeks were sunken, eyes closed, not asleep, just hanging on. I knelt beside him, put my hand near his nose. Warm breath, weak, but there. I looked around. No food left, no water. One empty bottle beside a pile of crumpled wrappers. They'd been here a while, at least a day. Maybe more. I looked back at the man. What happened? I asked. His eyes dropped. He shook his head, just barely. Crash. Storm. Don't know. He winced, pulled the blanket tighter around the boy. I could see the guilt on his face. Whatever happened up there in the sky, he wasn't ready to talk about it. Didn't matter. They were alive. And that was all I needed to know. I stepped out of the wreck and scanned the sky. No choppers. No search planes. Just silence. Thick clouds rolling in from the west. That's when it hit me. No one was looking for them. No one knew. That's the part that scared me the most. Not the wreck, not the injuries, but the silence. In a place like this, silence can be louder than a scream. I went back inside, dropped my pack, gave the man water from my thermos, just sips. Didn't want him choking. I unwrapped a strip of jerky and pressed it into the kid's hand. His fingers didn't close around it, too weak. But his lips moved. I looked at the man again. Can you walk? He shook his head. Leg. Gone. All right, I said. We're gonna do this the hard way then. I tore a flap of metal from one of the broken panels, folded it, reinforced it with branches and rope from my pack. It wasn't perfect, but it'd work as a drag sled. Took me the better part of an hour. Ranger paced while I worked. He kept glancing toward the trees. Something still had him spooked. When the sled was ready, I lifted the kid first. He was light, scary light, just bones and breath. I wrapped him in his blanket, set him on the sled, tucked him in. Then I went back for the man. He didn't complain, didn't cry out, just clenched his jaw while I braced his leg with 2 branches and a belt. When I dragged him onto the sled next to the boy, he grabbed my arm. His hand was ice cold. You came. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. And in my head, all I could think was, I didn't come. The wolf did. I tied the sled to my waist, tight, grabbed my rifle, looked at the trail ahead. 7, maybe 8 miles to the old mining road. From there, maybe someone would hear us. I looked back once before we started moving. No sign of the wolf. But I knew. He'd done his job. Now it was my turn. I knew right away it wasn't going to be easy. 7, maybe 8 miles of thick woods, deep snow, no path. One man near unconscious, a boy barely hanging on. And me, almost 50 years old, dragging 2 lives behind me on a makeshift sled. But I didn't think twice. When you see someone hurt like that, especially a kid, your body just moves. Doesn't matter if your back's already sore or your boots are soaked through. Doesn't matter how far it is, you go. I tied the harness tight around my waist, packed snow around the sled to brace it. Ranger walked a few paces ahead, ears up, sniffing. He knew this wasn't a normal trip. The first 100 yards felt like dragging a boulder. Every step was slow. Sled caught on roots, on drifts, on branches half buried. The man, Richard I'd learn later, groaned a few times but mostly stayed quiet, too weak to speak. The boy, Danny, didn't make a sound. I kept glancing back, making sure they were still breathing. That blanket was all they had between them and the wind. I kept it tucked tight around them, but it didn't feel like enough. Snow kept falling. Not heavy, just steady. The kind that soaks through your sleeves and makes your fingers go stiff if you stop moving. I didn't stop, not for a long time. The trees closed in tight in places. I had to cut through a few limbs just to get the sled through. Once the rope slipped and the sled tilted sideways. Danny almost rolled off. I caught him just in time. That shook me, made me pause, kneel in the snow, catch my breath. That's when I noticed my hands were bleeding. Rope burn. Didn't feel it till I saw the red on the snow, didn't matter. I wiped it on my coat and kept moving. After about 2 miles, I hit the ridge. I knew the trail from there. Used to hike it in summer to get to a small stream. But in the winter, it was different. Steeper, slicker, harder. I had to turn sideways, dig my boots in with every step. Sled kept trying to slide back. Every foot forward was a fight. Halfway up, I slipped. Went down hard. My face hit the snow, breath knocked out of me. For a second, I just laid there, eyes to the sky, chest heaving. And I thought, what if I can't do this? What if they die out here because I'm not strong enough? But then I felt it. A tug on the rope. Soft, gentle. Danny's little hand. Holding the edge of the sled. He was awake. Eyes barely open. But he looked at me. Didn't say a word, just looked. And in that look, I saw every reason I needed to stand up. So I did. I got up. I pulled. I made it over that ridge 1 foot at a time. On the other side, the land dipped into a long, flat stretch, easier ground. I moved faster there. Ranger stayed close, sometimes running ahead and looking back, like he was scouting for trouble. The cold got worse as the sun dipped. By late afternoon, my legs were shaking. My breath came in gasps. I'd long stopped feeling my fingers. But we kept going. There was one point I remember where I had to cross a frozen stream. The ice was thin. I tested it, then dragged the sled quick, light across the surface. I heard it crack under my boots, but it held. We got lucky. After what felt like forever, I saw it. A break in the trees, a cut in the land where the mining trucks passed every week or two. Not a road, not really. Just a path wide enough to hope for help. I dropped to my knees. I remember that moment clear as day. Me, kneeling in the snow. Hands numb, breath short, legs done. Ranger standing beside me looking down the trail. And the boy? He smiled. Just a little. Just enough. It was the only smile I saw from him that whole day. I stood up, lit a flare from my pack. Thank God I'd brought one. Held it high and waved it back and forth. Bright red in the gray sky. I waited. 10 minutes. 20. Then I heard it. An engine. Low and rough. A truck. Old flatbed used by one of the small mining crews. 2 men inside, eyes wide as they saw me and the sled. They stopped. Didn't say much, didn't need to. One jumped down, helped me lift Richard into the bed. Other one took Danny in his arms like he was his own kid. They drove us out. 3 hours later, we were at a ranger station with a radio and a medic. Helicopter came just before nightfall. They took Richard and Danny. I didn't go with them, didn't need to. My part was done. I stayed behind, drinking coffee in that little station, hands wrapped in towels, body aching from head to toe. Didn't say much. Just stared out the window, thinking about that wolf. There's things from that day I forget. Small things. What the flare smelled like. The color of the gloves the miner wore. whether I said thank you when they picked us up. But some things, I remember like they happened this morning. One of them is Danny's eyes. It wasn't what he said, 'cause he didn't say much. I think maybe 2 words the whole time I had him with me. It was how he looked at me. After the truck stopped and we got him inside the ranger station, one of the miners gave me a blanket and sat me down near the stove. My hands were raw. My back was tight as rope. But I could still move. Still think. They laid Danny down on a bench with some coats underneath him, covered him good. One of the rangers brought him warm water in a cup, held it to his lips. The boy drank slow, shaky, but his eyes stayed open, and he kept looking at me. Didn't blink much, didn't cry, just stared at me like I was something he couldn't quite figure out. Not scared, not even surprised, just watching. And in that look, I saw things I can't put into words real well. He'd been through hell. No food, no warmth, a plane crash, his dad out cold for who knows how long. And yet, there was no panic in him. Like part of him had already made peace with whatever was going to happen. But then I came, not with sirens or lights, not in a uniform or a helicopter, just a man, with a dog, in the snow. And now here he was, alive. I remember kneeling next to him, fixing the blanket and saying, real quiet, "You did good, kid." He didn't nod, didn't speak, just reached out and touched my arm, didn't grip, just rested his fingers there for a second, that was all. And I'll be honest, I almost lost it right then. See, I've been tough my whole life. Had to be. The war taught me to shut things out, pack 'em down, keep moving. But that little hand on my arm, it cracked something in me. Because I knew what he was trying to say. Knew he didn't have the strength or the words, but I felt it all the same. Thank you. I'm still here. That's all a man really needs to hear, isn't it? That he made a difference. That something he did mattered. Now, his father. That's a different memory. Richard Hayes. They got him stabilized quick, splinted the leg, gave him fluids. He was in pain, but awake, alert, enough to answer questions. They put him on a stretcher, ready for the chopper. One of the rangers asked how the crash happened. He looked away, said, "Don't remember." Another ranger asked why they were flying in a restricted zone without clearance. Same answer. Wasn't thinking, just wanted to see the mountains. Even then, it didn't add up. That stretch of sky was dangerous, unforgiven. Not the kind of place you take a kid unless you got a good reason. But he never explained. Never looked me in the eye. When they were about to lift him into the helicopter, I stood nearby. Not expecting much, just wanted to say goodbye. He caught my eye for a second. Didn't say thank you. Didn't ask my name. Just looked at me like he was carrying more than a busted leg. Like there was something he didn't want anyone to know. Then he looked away. Maybe he was embarrassed, maybe ashamed. Or maybe there was more to that flight than I'll ever know. I never heard from him after that. Never got a letter. Never a call. Danny either. Part of me used to wonder if I'd imagined the whole thing. If that day had been some strange dream. Snow, wolf, silence, rescue. All of it. But it was real. I know it because sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I can still feel the weight of that sled behind me. Still see Danny's eyes. Still hear Richard's silence. That's what stuck with me most. Not the pain. Not the miles. But the silence. What wasn't said. What hung in the air after they were gone. Sometimes I sit out on my porch looking at those same trees and wonder what really happened in that cockpit. What made Richard take that flight? Why no one reported them missing sooner? And why, out of all the people in the world, I was the one to find them. I don't have answers. But I've learned to live with the questions. That boy, he made it. I know that in my bones. He was strong. Quiet, but strong. He had something in him that couldn't be broken. Maybe that's why the wolf came to me. Maybe it wasn't just about finding a wreck. Maybe it was about finding him. It's been years now. Over 20. And still I think about it. More than I probably should. The snow's long gone. The trees have grown back over that trail. The plane? I heard they hauled what was left of it out that summer. Said it wasn't safe to leave it sitting there. Maybe they were right. But the memory never left. Some things stick. It's funny how the mind works. I've forgotten birthdays. Forgotten where I put tools. Forgotten names of people I fought beside. But I haven't forgotten that boy's eyes. Or the sound of that sled scraping behind me. Or the way the air smelled when I stepped into that clearing. And I sure haven't forgotten that wolf. I've tried to explain it to myself over the years, tried to reason it out. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe it wasn't a wolf. Maybe it was just a shadow or a trick of the light. Maybe my brain, still wired for survival, saw what it wanted to see. But no, I know what I saw. That animal was there. It watched me. It led me. And then it disappeared. No tracks. No sound. Like it had done its job and moved on. And I don't care if no one believes that. I stopped needing people to believe me a long time ago. I don't tell this story for that. I tell it because it lives in me, whether I like it or not. Some nights I still walk out onto my porch, cup of coffee in hand, breath misting in the air. I stare out into the woods. Same trees, same wind, same silence. And I wonder, what if I hadn't gone that day? What if I'd ignored the sound? What if I'd stayed in my cabin, fed the fire, and never looked twice? Would they have made it? Would anyone have found them? I don't think so. That plane went down in a place no one flies over. No trails, no signs, just snow and stone. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I was. And I keep asking myself, why me? Why not a ranger? Why not someone with a radio, a crew, a plan? I was just a man living quiet, alone by choice. I wasn't looking to save anyone, but sometimes the world don't care what you're looking for. It just puts something in front of you and you gotta decide what kind of man you are. I carried that boy because someone needed to. I didn't ask his name until it was over. Didn't ask why they were flying in that stretch of sky. Didn't ask why the father couldn't meet my eyes. I just did what I had to do. But still, that silence eats at me. Richard never told me what happened. Never told the Rangers either, far as I know. Official report said engine failure, said navigation error, but even that didn't make sense. He was flying too low, in the wrong place, at the wrong time. Some folks whispered he was running from something, that maybe he took the plane without permission, that he had debts, trouble back home. I don't know. Maybe he made a mistake. Maybe he got scared. Maybe he thought he could fly his son away from whatever it was. All I know is, they lived. They shouldn't have. But they did, because of 100 things that went just right, and one wolf. Sometimes I wonder if that wolf was ever real at all. But deep down, I think he was. I think he was more real than most people I've met. I never saw him again, not once, and I kept looking. For weeks after, I scanned the ridges, checked for prints, left food out, even howled once, late at night, like some fool. But he never came back, like he was part of the forest, or maybe part of something older, something that don't answer to men. You know, I used to think the war would be the hardest thing I'd carry, but it ain't. It's the things you can't explain. The boy I never saw again. The father who said nothing. The silence that never got filled. That's the weight. People don't think a quiet life can leave marks, but it can. The kind no one sees. The kind you don't talk about over dinner. Marks that live behind your eyes, in your bones, in your breath on cold nights. But even with all that, I don't regret it. If I had to do it again, I would. I'd follow that wolf into the woods. I'd carry that sled till my legs gave out. I'd kneel beside that boy and hold his hand again. Because in that moment, I knew who I was. Not a soldier, not a hermit, not a man running from noise, just someone who showed up when it counted. And sometimes, that's enough. I never thought I'd tell this story. Kept it buried for a long time. Not because I was ashamed, not because I was scared, just didn't know how to talk about it, didn't think anyone would believe it. A wolf leading a man to a wrecked plane in the middle of nowhere? A boy surviving a fall that should have taken both their lives? A father who looked right through me like I was a mirror? It all sounds like something out of a book. But it happened. And I think maybe now, after all these years, I understand why I've carried it this long. See, there's things in this world that don't make sense. Things you can't measure with a ruler or explain with science. Things that happen once and never again. And those things, they stay with you. Not like scars, more like fingerprints. They change how you see the world, how you see yourself. After that day, I went back to my cabin, chopped wood, fished, ate alone, slept light, just like always. But something was different. The silence felt heavier, not worse, just fuller. Like the woods weren't just woods anymore. Like maybe they held stories too. Not just mine. All kinds. Forgotten ones. Ones that never got told. Sometimes I'd walk that same trail, hoping maybe I'd see that wolf again. Never did. But every now and then, I'd feel watched, not in a bad way. Just a presence, like I wasn't alone. And I guess that's what I wanted to say, more than anything. You're not alone. Even when it feels like you are. Even when the snow's deep and the world's quiet, and you think no one knows where you are or what you're carrying. You're not. There's still kindness out there. Still instincts worth trusting. Still people, quiet people maybe, who'll show up when it counts. I'm not special. I'm not brave. I'm not looking for applause. I was just there. And when the moment came, I moved. That's all. If you're watching this and you've got something you've never told, maybe now's the time. Maybe there's someone out there who needs to hear it. We all got our wreckage. We all got our silences. But sometimes, just speaking it out loud, it helps. So if you've got a story, one of those deep ones, the kind that sticks, I hope you share it. Doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be dramatic, just real. Real is enough. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there needs it more than you know. I'll leave it at that. Thanks for listening. And if you're ever walking in the snow and see something staring at you from the tree line, don't be afraid. Sometimes the forest remembers.